Good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to, is the mic good? Yeah? Welcome to Yellow Park. So, yeah, today we got this great event. We're going to talk about engineering management, which is a very interesting topic. I'll be doing some introduction. So, first of all, I'm Giovanni. I'm a senior engineering manager here at Glovo. Before we start, just a couple of notes. Just basically kind of house rules. So we don't expect to have drills. So if you actually hear the fire alarm, if it goes off, we should leave. Yeah, so also like if you have any questions or if you wanna just any curiosities, there are some organizers in the room, like with Glovo t-shirts. So feel free to reach out to any of them and ask questions. Cool. With that said, let's. Yeah. YouTube. Cool. I didn't know that. This doesn't work. Cool. Yeah. It works now. Cool. So let's have a look at the agenda. So I'll kick things off by talking a little bit about Glovo, and then I'll pass on the mic to my colleague Raz, who'll be talking about performance indicators for engineering teams. And then Mauro will talk to us about technical excellence. There will be some time for Q&A, and then we'll wrap up the evening with some networking, and there will be pizza and drinks. We plan to finish around 9 p.m. Cool. So what is Glovo? So Glovo is a tech company, a pioneering tech company and a multi-category app. We operate in a three-sided marketplace. So we try to connect users with businesses and couriers. And in terms of the kind of the businesses we work with, it's kind of a big variety of them. So we work with local restaurants, but also kind of grocers, supermarkets, pharmacies, and high street kind of retails stores. So let's take a quick look at the Glovo's business models. And rather than the business models, actually the services that kind of Glovo offers to its users. I think we're kind of all familiar with the delivery from restaurants, but actually Glovo does a lot more than that. We work with pharma and beauty, supermarket, a variety of shops, and also we offer a service that is called on demand. That's when like businesses don't want to be on our marketplace, but they still want to leverage kind of the couriers, the Glovo's kind of courier fleet and the logistic engine. And we also offer more generic kind of courier services. Some look at some numbers in terms of Glovo's footprints. So Glovo currently has 4.5K employees. We operate in 25 countries, 1.4K cities. We have more than 200 active couriers, 175,000 active partners, and we serve 22 million users. So fairly big numbers. So before I wrap up, just some curiosities, and this will serve as a little bit of an icebreaker. So what do you think are some of the strangest things that Glovo has delivered? Any guesses? What, sorry? A dog? A pet? I don't know if that's happened. I wouldn't be surprised given some of the things I have in the next slide. Any more guesses? Sorry? Motorcycle. I think that's, it might be a bit big for our courier's bag, but again, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, let's have a look at some of those things. Actually, so one order was for dried insects to feed an anaconda, and that happened in Georgia. Then there was an order in Poland for 732 tea bags. The one in Spain with 800 euros worth of adult toys. Pretty interesting. And then there was one in Montenegro for some divorce papers as well. So if you think that Glovo only delivers food from restaurants, that's definitely wrong. So we do, we do a lot more than that. And actually, that brings us nicely to Glovo's vision, which is about giving everyone easy access to anything in their city. And that's all from me. I'll pass on the mic to my colleague, Raz. Yeah, thanks for coming and enjoying the evening.
Cool. Hi, can everyone hear me? Cool. My name is Raz, like Raz Mataz without the Mataz. Razvan is the full name. Yes, for engineering managers, an amazing opportunity to have yet another meeting on an office day. So let's not treat it as a meeting. We're off hours. Let's relax. Let's enjoy networking at the end. The only responsibility is on me, so you don't have to worry about it. I just am performance review is against this, so it has to go well. But for you, it's just a speaker presenting in front of you and hopefully being interesting today. So why am I speaking today specifically? Well, Raz is, I've started 10 years ago volunteering for the European Youth Parliament. So for the last 10 years, I've been traveling around Europe to teach people how to build teams, how to lead, how to organize, and what are the base of people leadership and leadership specifically. I fell in love with it. It became my hobby. And then I left my previous job and I went scuba diving last year, as per the second picture. And while I was there, I also started a newsletter and an online presence with my concept of the ripple effect leadership, which is basically I'm obsessed with the concept of ripple effect. Imagine a rock going into a lake and then it creates ripples. This is how I see my leadership. You as a manager are the rock and your impact ripples forward and forward through the people that you impact with your work. And then I found someone to pay me to do that for free online. So I joined Glovo in June last year, in 2023. And I have been loving every minute since. I'm very grateful for Glovo for giving people with a vision, a space to be here in front and have this type of opportunities. And I'm very grateful for all of you for giving some hours today out of the extra day of the year that we get today. It's 29th of February. You could have used it however you want, but you're using it to be here with us. So thank you for taking the leap in the leap day. So yes, I know I have plenty. So before I go into my content, one preemptiveness, I will go over time. I'm sorry, Mauro. It's because I also want to present a bit the concept of the EM Accelerator, not just the content specifically. It's been an idea that I've been brewing for a few months in Glovo. I felt that, being an EM is a full-time job in all its responsibilities, even if you're not an EM. I think it's clear. Our day-to-day looks kind of like this. It's us having to tackle people management, product leadership, technology direction, business growth, team management, career development, all of it coming from top down, and we have to take it more further down to our teams. So there's very little time or space for further interaction with other EMs, making the EM job feel secluded or lonely or alone. Sometimes lacking that space of sharing things that happen. Hence, we all share, however, the same goal, which is building high-performing teams. We all have the same goal, but we're experts at reinventing the wheel, but not talking to each other and sharing what we're doing. I'm sure that what I'll present today, another company has been doing it for 10 years. But because we haven't built that space, we're lacking the shared learning and understanding of what works and what doesn't. Hence, introducing the Accelerator, which is the space for shared learning, community building, and personal development. So in terms of shared learning, I think it's quite obvious. It's our opportunity as EMs to learn together, to see what other people are doing, and to build a community where we understand what are the best practices or new practices that we can build. Community building for people that are EMs or not. This is just one of hopefully many EM Accelerator series. So hopefully we'll build we will build a community of engineering managers that come together and share learnings and grow together. And finally, personal development. So firstly, for example, our videographer and photographer in the back there, Mateusz, he's an EM. and he's developing his soft skills by using his photography and video skills today. I'm developing my skills by speaking in front. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I am shaking. And you will all hopefully develop somehow personally through the intentional networking we'll do today. So before we go into anything, if it's tempting, there's more coming. This is just the trial run, and I'm very excited to have the trial run. But before we go into the topic, let's do a short exercise together. So let's try to look at the person on our left and look at the person on your left. Now, like face each other, and at the person on your right. So you probably sit with your friends, but however, there's people around the room, and I want you to be aware that you're with other people. And then let's do a bit of a stretch by lifting up our right hand. All of you, come on, come on, come on. And lifting up our left hand. Come on, come on, come on. Cool. If you have any questions, it's that easy. This is how you do it. Don't worry, you're not gonna, nothing will happen to you if you lift your hand or ask any questions throughout the, after the presentation. Cool. Okay, ready? Cool. Welcome to At the Starting Line, namely performance indicators for engineering teams. In order for us to, this is the only very big text slide that I have for you today. I feel like it's important for me to set the scene for you to understand what performance indicators are in order for what I'm going to present to make sense. They're vital, they're indicators that are vital for providing measurable insights into our teams. They allow us to track progress, identify improvement points, and making sure that we make data-driven decisions, emphasis on data-driven. We estimate clear performance indicators which allow us to be transparent. We are clear on what the points are, and most important, alignment with organizational objectives. And finally, if you use indicators, they have to be relevant, measurable, and actionable. Clear? Cool. The agenda for today will go through 4 sections, hopefully in the time allocated. More looking at productivity indicators, efficiency indicators, quality indicators, and impact indicators. My personal hopes for this presentation is that building this presentation, I was thinking, how can I build the same impact that Netflix TV shows have? The dramas, the suspense that makes you want to watch it all the time, that goes up and high, and you want to really know what's happening next. How do I build a story for you today since you're coming off hours for this meetup? And hence, welcome to Lead to Survive, which is hopefully trademarked soon. It's inspired by Drive to Survive, which is a TV show about Formula One. And it's race week for the people that are first race week of the year, if you watch Formula One. Hence, we will be very Netflix dramatic in how we present today. Q, June 2023, Barcelona, Spain, which is when I started at Glovo. Getting my first team, I've identified that we had a few very clear low points into our work. The tasks had no description, and basically people were just throwing them in the board. The speed was very slow, or I wasn't unsure if the speed is clear or not because there was no indicator. And finally, the backlog, even though we had a roadmap, it was just put it into do, let's do it today. So if anyone wanted something to be done, it was just applied, put into do, and taken on this week. I think we've all, as engineering managers, faced that at some point or another where there was not a lot of clarity. Hence, it allowed me to ask myself, how do I create an order in the team's ways of working? And this is done through productivity indicators that I've applied. More specifically, I am now measuring velocity, measuring the rate at which features are completed, sizing, measuring the engineering effort that each task will require, and finally, backlog readiness, measuring the quality of our issues in regards to clarity, dependencies, and potential risks. Now, coming back to present, in February 2024, still in Barcelona, these indicators are present in my teams through the following rituals: story leaders, backlog grooming, and weekly planning. Hopefully the grooming and the planning does not really surprise anyone, but I do want to go deeper into how those are part of the actual core of how my teams operate. For the first one, however, story leaders, this is a concept that I've introduced in my teams at the start of my time at Glovo. A story leader is one of my engineers in my team, which is responsible for a user story that comes from product to do the tech breakdown, the stakeholder alignment, making sure all of the things are ticked in the user story, and finally to write the tasks. So the product manager sends the user story, we assign a story leader, and they get a week to prepare all the tasks, to make sure the dependencies are clear, to make sure we don't have any blockers, and that everything is ready for development. As an example in Jira, every user story has some story leaders or two if it's backend and frontend, and then the stories are then broken down into tickets which are picked up by the team. Those story leaders are very important in the backlog grooming, where they get the first role, first seat, and the most important role in order to do the grooming. Because we get the tech breakdown validation from the tasks that they write, we do a risk assessment, whether the tasks are clear or not. And finally, we do a size alignment. So in terms of sizing, I don't know about your teams. Does anyone here use sizing with story points in their teams? Yeah. Cool. Well, my team was quite new, and I opted for t-shirt sizes instead of story points because story points for engineers are very much related to days and to time. So it was very hard to push my engineers to stop to think about complexity rather about days required to deliver something. So I've built my estimations based on t-shirt sizes, and I've aligned each size with an example ticket in terms of complexity. So engineers think of, oh, this is as complex as that, or it requires this much work, instead of thinking, oh, it will take me 3 days to do it. And then in order to get to a unit size, which is still required, I have transformations for the t-shirt sizes and how much they mean. Because if I look at the board after, I can transform all of the tickets into how many extra small tickets have been completed in total. And finally, all of this with the story leaders coming with the tasks, sizing them in the backlog grooming, and preparing them, everything comes together in that weekly planning, which is my favorite ceremony, which is data-driven, velocity-focused, and a source of improving. It's a space where I present my engineers what can they do better or not. How that looks in the slides, this is slides that my my team see every Monday. I have one engineer in the audience, he can confirm. So they see the control chart from Jira. If you're not familiar with the control chart from Jira, it allows us to see the average days a task spends on the board, which then can show you whether what you say that you complete this week, you've actually completed in that week. So what I put in to do on Monday needs to be finished by Friday because I do weekly I use Kanban, so weekly chunks of work. And then it allows you to see whether you have deviations or not. And if you have a deviation, for example, if it took 2 weeks, it means you haven't groomed it properly. It means there were external things you forgot about or things that you didn't think before you had your tasking to do, which allows us then to look and say, hey, we can improve on that or we can do that better. We also have the number of issues completed every Monday. So how many issues are completed or in review, which then get translated into the sizing. So how many extra small, medium, and large tickets we have completed, adding up with the transformations to a final size in unit. So 77 was last week for one of my teams. The prediction I had the week before for this week was 45. So they overbeat all my expectations last week. Beyond that, we also set up the sizing chart. So my prediction for each engineer per week is 14 extra small tickets in terms of unit transformations. And then I have 5 engineers, so I have 70 units available to distribute on my tasks for the next week. And then how you can use this is then you can go in your board and see, oh, I have a medium, but a medium means 4 extra small. So then if I put that into do, I have 66 extra small left. And the units then get transformed back into t-shirt sizes, and it allows me to be as predictable as possible with how much they can achieve. Is this clear? Cool. Also in their planning meetings, they see the pre-work deadlines, which are the story leaders, which need to finish their research for this week in order to be ready for the grooming next week. And also the deadlines for every project in order to make sure that they know what needs to be completed and what are the expectations from them in that week. With those in mind, with the grooming, story leaders, and that type of planning, I believe that these productivity indicators, velocity, sizing, and backlog readiness are met for my team. Cool? Still with me? Very good. Thank you, Borja. Next, we go back, though, in the past to August 2023. The drama continues. We're still in Barcelona, Spain. And even though I had a great estimation, I was slow. My team was slow. I was not delivering at the pace. I was estimating for them to meet it, but it was not fast enough. So the question comes, how do I increase the velocity that I calculate? How do I make my team faster? And that's where efficiency metrics have come in order for me to display to my engineers what they're doing right or wrong. More exactly, DORA metrics, where I specifically measure incidents, time to deploy, and cycle time. I measure focus time every week for the team. And finally, it's the resource utilization rate, but I don't like to call my engineers resource, so I go with team utilization rate, which is measuring if the headcount is properly positioned towards completing the tasks. So how that looks like now, still in Barcelona, February 2024, in the planning, in the same meeting, the team sees their DORA metrics, which are built for the whole Glovo organization. So if you have a backend service, you have available DORA metrics for your teams. And it allows me to point to the engineers whether or not there's been incidents or not. And that incident takes a very long time to fix, for example. And we can keep track of what happened. How can we improve it? Because that takes time from their work, which means they won't meet the prediction that I make. Beyond that, I calculate focus time available for every team. So at Glovo, we have 40 hours, hopefully contractual. Lunch, 6 hours for the week. Ceremonies, last week took 10 hours. So my standard ceremonies take 7 hours. But last week I had an issue for front-end teams where they needed 1 extra hour and all hands 2 hours because we had an all hands a few weeks ago. So the final available time is 24 hours. You may be wondering how that helps. If you remember, my prediction per week is 14 extra small for each engineer. So if I have 5 engineers losing 5 hours, they lose half a day, which means if I divide 14 by 5, it's 2.8 extra small per day per engineer. And then half a day is 1.4 extra small. So I decrease from the expectation how much time I take away from them. I transform the time I take from them into t-shirt sizes, which then makes me be more predictable and ensure I don't overestimate how much I can achieve. And finally, the team utilization rate. I have very clear standards for my product manager. We will not pick up as story leaders anything that is not clear from data, from external components, and from product. I do pair engineering in order to ensure that where we're slow, engineers learn from other engineers and move better utilization rate. And finally, I have parallel tasks. I think everyone has that where, design is preparing the next task while engineers are building that while product is preparing the next one. So we're not waiting on anyone at any point. So with those 3 in mind, I fully recommend for you to introduce and present your team DORA metrics, focus, and utilization rate in order to make sure you're faster. Clear up to now? Thank you. Back in the past, though. October 2023. Surprisingly, still in Barcelona, Spain. In a push to be faster, unfortunately, my quality has dropped. October was not a pretty month for me, even though it was my birthday. I pushed to be fast, but the fastness made a lot of incidents and caused a lot of issues. This was me during October. We all love this meme. And the question was, how do I measure quality then? How do I account for quality in how much time and speed I have for my engineers? Hence, quality indicators have been introduced to the team. I now measure tech depth for the team while pushing towards weekly tech depth commitments. We have a Glovo index of quality, which is a great initiative that we have right now. It allows us to measure the quality of our code with specific focus areas. So it changes indicators based on what is the focus of the company. And finally, we have support, where right now I measure how much time engineers spend on support every week, because that also takes time from them. So that also reduces their probability to fulfill tasks. So by this point, I'm questioning why I've added Barcelona, Spain here, but going back to present, in February 2024, still in the planning meeting, Fede can confirm, we have green flag sizing, which is how we call support at Glovo. So if you have spent 5 hours in the week for support, it's S. If you spend 10 hours in a week, it's M. If you spend 15 hours or more, it's a large. And those hours are again quantified to t-shirt sizes, so then I can decrease or increase my velocity. I have the GIQ score every Monday for the team in order for them to see what is their score for their services specifically, and more exactly how the PRs from the last week have decreased or increased their GIQ score, because obviously your decisions make or break your score. And in the end, we have tech depth. Weekly, small tech depth is tackled every week in my team. Repetitive support becomes a tech priority, because obviously if it keeps repeating, it will increase the time on green flag. And it's driven by monitors as well, because we tend to forget that support doesn't come just from external people. If your monitors are on fire, you have to fix them. So I drive data from that as well. And finally, Rafa's favorite Airtable, we also do at a company level a TED debt tracker where we keep account of things we've promised, but we haven't done yet. And this is something that this will move the needle forward, because if you are stuck in the past, you cannot focus on the future. And this is what TED debt does to us. It drives us behind. Hence, I fully recommend for you to implement indicators such as TED debt, GIQ, and support in order to make sure your quality stays strong while you're still fast. And then December comes, and we're still in Barcelona, Spain. And unfortunately, and now I had to question, okay, I'm great, my teams are doing great, but how do I sell to the company what my team achieved in the last 6 months? And this is where you introduce impact indicators. We have OKRs in the whole company, of course, objective key results, which allows us to see our impact against our initiatives, where we measure the business impact. I also look at research, so I look at how much documentation my engineers have written, whether or not they present themselves, sharing knowledge to other people in the cluster or in the team. And finally, I measure stability through operational excellence, and I'll explain to you why stability is for me an impact indicator very soon. So now going back to the present, the new rituals that we have are strategic alignment, which is every 6 weeks, me and my product manager present to our engineers their impact to the business by the work that they do. So in order to keep them rooted into how they move the needle of Glovo, otherwise engineers, just get stuck in getting tasks done. So their work is, yeah, I finished this front-end task, but how did that impact the business? So every 6 weeks, we remind them and show them what we do. We have knowledge cafes, which is an opportunity for people to share the research that they do and how that goes forward. And finally, OPEX meeting, which is the operational excellence meeting. And this is where I wanted to explain why for me it's an impact indicator. It's because again, in the planning, the OPEX score, which is a Glovo company-wide score, is driven by our incidents or by how many pager duties we had, which means if there's an incident, we are losing as a company, either through order loss or we couldn't onboard enough couriers or any details such as like that, which means we have an impact if our OPEX is low. So for me, the operational excellence score is an impact indicator. And with this in mind, the impact indicators, I say, are applied as well. So it wasn't easy to get here. These were all the 4 categories of indicators that I have in the team. It's a very challenging thing, as everything that an engineering manager does is. More specifically, you have to be very careful to not overemphasize on what's quantitative at the expense of qualitative. Being an EM doesn't mean just to tick off numbers. It means to be careful at the culture, at how your team is doing, at how your team is feeling in the company. What was the word in Swahili, Shwiro? Furaha, exactly, which means happiness in Swahili, and it's a company project to focus on qualitative things as well. You have to be very careful if you get to implement indicators to not have a misalignment between yourself and the organization. If I want quality, but the company wants speed, there's a misalignment and it might cause issues. We all know how great engineers are reacting to change, usually. So you have to be very careful on how you integrate them. I don't expect you to, please do not go to your teams and introduce 12 indicators tomorrow. You have to go slowly at every 3 months and make sure that they adopt and react positively to what you're introducing. And finally, this is a weekly work. I do this every Monday. I learn and relearn and look at what works and what doesn't in order to make sure that my indicators are clear and beneficial for my teams. So how I do that? I've built a culture around performance indicators. My team's culture and gist and heart is the performance indicators. This is how you can do it as well as EMs. You can foster a culture that values data-driven decisions. So I'm being transparent, and everything that they do and their performance is based on data. So they know exactly that I'm not just giving fluff. I'm actually clear on whether or not they're doing well. I encourage open communication within the team. I analyze and look for continuous improvement. And finally, I review and refine them based on feedback. And the GIQ score you saw here is a proposal from one of my engineers in the room. And you always have to listen and bring forward improvements if possible. If you're not an EM and you're an individual contributor today, you can bring the introduction of indicators as well. You should have expectations for us, the EMs. Give feedback on indicators, take ownership of your performance, recognize and celebrate your achievements based on moving faster, having less support, being quiet, and embed the indicators as clear example of an individual's performance during review periods. This is for EMs, but this is also for ICs. So the performance of my individual contributors is very much based on how our team moved. The results of your IC is based on the results of the team. And that means the performance indicators are driven by each individual contributor in the team. So if you base it like that, you remain data-driven. So the conclusion is that it's not that easy, and you need to have a balance between staying quantitative and qualitative at the same time. But performance indicators allow you to be as fair to your individual contributors and your teams as possible. I recommend building a mantra around it, and my teams hear this every Monday. This is the mantras of my teams, which is creating impact at the fastest speed and best quality. Finding that middle line is very hard, and it requires a lot of work. But if you introduce indicators such as the ones presented today, you'll have a much better chance in order to get that. I've skipped a slide by mistake, but the results that I have are that my lead time for the team has reduced by 50%. So we're 50% faster than what we were in June when I started with these indicators. My teams are focused, they're clear, they're much more focused on prioritization, and we're delivering impact that they see and they feel related to. So we'll have more time during the Q&A to discuss more about it. Hopefully the presentation did not bore you. Hopefully I've led to survive, but up to now, I just want to say thank you. Cool. Thank you very much. This will all be available for you as well, but until then, we have a second speaker who is not Andalusian, but celebrates the day of Andalusia from yesterday. Please allow me to introduce Mauro, one of our principal engineers at Glovo.
Thank you, Russ. I'm going to try and keep the mood. It's going to be very hard, I have to say. Keep your energy and the drama and so on. I'm going to be a bit more techie, boring kind of style. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about technical excellence, TLDR, super biased presentation, my own understanding. It's not my employer's understanding, so on and so forth. And first thing I did, trying to remove a little bit the bias, I actually asked ChatGPT for the description, which is what everyone does, no? I think 40%, I need to move like, okay, here, vale. 40% of our work now is done by AI, so. And actually I didn't like this. I could have liked it, but I only changed sustainability for speed, linking to what Raz mentioned before. It's that sweet spot of trying to find the highest quality at the fastest speed, so you're not compromising on both, or you're compromising on both to the degree that is needed. So first one I want to touch on a little bit is on quality. Oh, no, sorry, meme. Yeah, race week, sorry, forgot about that. So yeah, it's kind of Formula One, pit stop kind of metaphor. So basically the first one is on quality. And these are the quality measures, more or less summarized to me. There are a lot of, there's a lot of written out there about quality. First one is reliability, of course, Raz already mentioned. As an example, for us, by focusing on reliability, we decreased by 3 times the amount of GTV we lost in 2023 versus 2022. For the ones that are at Glovo or at Glovo 2022, that was a fun year to be in. Then there are other 2, amazing. I really did bad with animations. So security, of course, that, a data leak, it's not only reputational, but also financial cost. So it's key. And performance. And I touch base a little bit on performance in a bit. Then it's also about scalability, right? Still, maybe you might not know, but actually at Glovo, we're still growing at quite a, I would say, fast pace compared to the market. So actually, we need to have a big mindset about how our systems are scaling, if we open new markets, or we open new cities, and so on and so forth. And then I also see the animations are not my thing. Make it adaptable, so as an example, we have Gaston here. Back in time, we did a project which was allowing Croatia to switch to euros. And actually, that might seem a very small change, but actually, we need to really drill down into our systems to make sure that could happen. So actually, this adaptability of systems is key. And also, macroeconomics, you probably know about it. Cost efficiency is something very important. And yeah, Joan is sitting next to Gaston, so you can ask Joan about cost. So that's actually one of the big ones to me that usually is not mentioned, but to me is quite key on developing any sort of system. And then about performance, you might have seen this. If you haven't ever seen it, I'm happy. My WhatsApp is full of people seeing this. So actually, why is the performance part, the quality is so key? Actually, you can check this online, but majority of I would say studies claim that around 50% or more than 50% of users expect actually a page or an app to respond in less than 3 seconds. And what's the problem? If you're a customer and you're hungry and Glovo is taking more than 3 seconds, it's very slow, you start to think about these other options, which I won't mention because it is being recorded, but you shouldn't. But also, we live in a market in Glovo where actually more than 50% of our users have at least one more app installed on their phones. So it's super easy when you're hungry and the app is taking long to load to just switch to another competitor, right? And we don't want that. You should stick with Glovo, always. Please, I get paid for this. And then about speed, okay? So that was a little bit on quality. On the speed side, okay, how to find the middle ground. Actually, it's a big topic. I don't think there is like a standard industry. There's Dora. Raz made a great point about how he's improving that. For this part of the presentation, I took a little bit of the license of bringing my own point of view to this. And actually, I liked a lot. I don't like the guy, but I liked a lot from the last book about Elon Musk. There's actually one thing that they call the Elon Musk algorithm, which has 5 steps. He introduced this first on the Tesla production lines, but he's porting it now to software engineering. I actually felt it was quite interesting. So first step of the algorithm to try to be faster and more efficient is actually questioning. And it's actually also something that Raz touched on. Always question the requirements, regardless of where they come from. Actually, in the book, it's quite explicit that he expects people to question himself, not only others. Second, and again, great animations, delete as many parts as you can. And here, to me, is actually the best quote from this entire process, which actually should delete so many things that you feel you need to re-add 10% of what you killed. Right, which means you really did a thorough job on being super pragmatic. And then also simplifying. Once you have all these different steps in the process or different milestones on your project, you're trying to simplify those as much as you can. But once those are clear, right, and the requirements are super clear. Then the fourth one is accelerate. So you go in each one of these steps and accelerate them in isolation even, the cycle time of each one of those. And then last, which I know for a lot of engineers is gonna, you're gonna raise your eyebrows, is automation, right? We usually start with automation first, but actually the suggestion is to go with automation last. Once the process is super clear, super efficient, super streamlined. Actually, also from the book, there's a really good quote that when he joined Tesla, started to automate a lot of processes that didn't make sense. So it was a waste of time for the people building automations and the team itself. So always try to have a super efficient process before starting with that. Again, I found it super interesting. And then also, of course, Parkinson's law, which is probably familiar to a lot of people. This is the sweet spot that Raz was mentioning. If you ask me how much it is, should always be 1 week less than what you think should be, but that's me. So usually, as I said, that's the hardest part. How do you find that middle ground? Because also it's very difficult. And also the task, you might think it has certain complexity, suddenly it untangles to be something way bigger. So it's not that easy. The law is very nice. There's a graph and slides, but yeah. Bringing it to reality, I would say it's a company by itself. Then, if the clicker works, amazing. No, can I go back? Okay, cool. And then I was thinking, okay, how can we do this at scale? And you had a spoiler, but actually this is a picture of myself with the engineering team in the first hackathon I was in. Actually, not everyone was engineering. Engineering team was around 10 people. And I haven't mentioned I joined Glovo 2017 in January. There's people from business also in this picture. And actually, Glovo right now is more than 500 people in engineering. So how did I think we kept this mantra, this scale, because all the things I mentioned, actually, I remember discussing them through my interviews back in time. So I kind of identified 6 key elements that I've been reflecting on these past years. The first one is actually making it part of your DNA, right? There's a lot of times we just think about this as a goal. Okay, let's reach this uptime, let's reach this cycle time, etc. And I think it's more about how you act, how you react to the different situations, because you're going to have ups and downs, right? This is I see like the stock market. You're going to have go up, then go down. You need to keep that consistency and make it part of your DNA. And with that, I actually think it correlates really well with high bar, which was one of our values, which one I tried to extrapolate to some idea or concept, for example. Then the second one is clear boundaries. To me, this summarizes it pretty well. You should treat any organizational dependency like codependency. And just the least the better. Have supervised like independent teams that can drive end-to-end project and deliver value by themselves without needing to wait for others. I really like on this, there's Conway's law, of course, probably you're all familiar with, that in the end, systems or different artifacts that the company generates replicates the company's structure. And I really like this meme when you can see the different structure for different companies. And you can actually see that when you use some of their products, right? So always having Conway's law in mind and seeing how it's affecting your team or the way you're architecting something is really important. And then last, you don't want your engineers to be like this, right? I think this is the only thing I would put. Like, think about, Fanta. He's standing there waiting for someone else to finish something. That's not what you want. So basically, just try to isolate teams as much as you can with clear purpose, clear boundaries, and deliver value. Then third is extreme ownership. There's always, as companies scale, there's always this sort of easy solution sometimes of pointing fingers, either internally or externally to a third-party provider. Oh, this third-party provider is super bad. Well, sure. In the end, to me, is about questioning yourself always first. There's always something you can do before questioning others to fix it, right? And that also correlates with one of our values, which is actually ownership. And I think it really summarizes it really well. Then fourth is about being user-centric. I think that empathy actually is one of the things that will help the most driving excellence. Now, if you get a ticket or you get raised an issue and you empathize with what is the impact on the end customer, you're actually going to be more creative and faster to resolve. You asked me for numbers, I don't have. But I can tell you that I think that's kind of how I feel about it. And actually at Glovo, one thing we do is actually Glovo Cares, which is once every at least 3 months. We go on delivering orders. And here you see myself with Edu and Eugene, also principal engineers at Glovo, and with Shiro, which is the CTO. And we went to do Glovo Cares a few weeks back, and the experience was actually quite interesting. We're using the app, we saw a lot of things, we created a document, and the team was super engaged. And I think these sort of initiatives, where you really go to the ground and feel the pains of your users, is actually super, super important to driving that excellence. Then fifth, I touched a little bit on the DNA part. It's actually about consistency, I kind of see the curve on excellence a little bit like a logarithmic curve. So you see like kind of this, right? And the moment you reach that T point, probably you doubt about the ROI, but actually consistency where you reach that point, to me, it's crucial. And I touch a little bit on why next. But basically, going back to race week, this is an example I found really interesting. So actually, Formula One has prizes for the best team in pit stops. And actually, if you check on the right side, McLaren has 6 out of the 10 fastest pit stops last year. But Red Bull is number 1. And the reason why I start to look at it is because of the consistency of how fast they were doing this. The deviation of the pit stops, it was the smallest one, right? So I think this is also what we need to keep in mind. It's not about one-off gains. Oh, this month we reached 4 nines in uptime. Amazing. Yeah, let's focus on something else. Next month, you're going to be at 98% uptime. I can tell you because I've seen this. So basically, it's about that consistency, never being... one thing I say always, when you reach a target, that's your new baseline, and I think that consistency and always pushing is really key. And then the sixth and last one that I thought about is actually the power of compounding, right? So compounding can go actually in both sides. Can play for you or play against you. And I mentioned before, that we improved in 2023 versus 2022. One of the issues we had in 2022 at Glovo actually was the compounding of small bits of things that we left over, tech debt, many things that compound to a situation that we needed to address, right? By shifting priorities, disrupting the product roadmap, and so on and so forth. So actually being super aware of that compounding effect and not leaving things for tomorrow is actually something very important. And on this, I actually have a very interesting example. This is from, it's in English, but it's from Korea. So I was actually there with Shiro back in September. And this is from Woowa, which is our sister cousin company in Korea from Delivery Hero. And actually, this is a slide about how they do incident management. It's not on the slide, but something to keep in mind is for 2023, they had 100% uptime, 0% downtime, right, on their systems. And one of the things that catch my attention, which is in the slide, and I know it's very small, is that actually how they treat false alarms or noisy alarms. Every time there is a false alarm or a noisy alarm, the on-call engineer is expected to stay on the alarm until they understand why it triggered and why it resolved, and modify it if needed. Usually, at least my experience so far is a lot of times, oh, there's a noisy alarm, let's create a ticket, we're gonna monitor it in 2 weeks, we're gonna see in a month, and then you create so much noise that it's very hard to tell which ones are good alarms and which ones are not. So this is one example to me, like you shifted focus to that, just adding that small bit on resolving that false alarm will add up to a healthier system down the line. And then how do you execute? So on execution, basically I have four key elements that I think we do at Glovo and I think are really important. First one is weekly reviews. So basically with engineering, we sit every week together to review the incidents and the biggest, even on OKRs, the biggest blockers that we have, and try to push them forward. This is mandatory for certain people and optional for others. For example, we will have as optional, the on-call engineer was on an incident and created one of the that handled it. Then second is about learning. I put a screenshot here of our PIR template, but actually it can be in the form of retro, small document. There are a lot of times that I see people don't do PIRs just because, oh, I need to go through the process of getting a PIR. Just tell them, just do a small document, and then if it's worth a PIR, we move it there. But at least having that mindset of always learning, because what you experience today, I'm quite sure is going to prevent something tomorrow if you think about it at least for 2 hours. Third is replicates. And actually, Ras mentioned that you introduced the OpEx meeting in the team. Actually, that's the thing to me. Like, you can have that one at the big scale. You need to have the same forum at lower scopes so that you can have those meaningful conversations deeper within those groups, and not just refer to the big meeting, because in the end, this bigger scope is some things will fall into the cracks. Then last one is about making it super measurable. Everything you try to tackle, making it super measurable. This is a screenshot from one thing we introduced at Glovo last year, which is a performance scorecard for mobile apps. So actually, we try to come up with all these metrics and really quantify what are the decent values that we want or what we don't want to have, assign weights, and then we basically have now OKRs on top of those, et cetera. And it's very easy to track this, right? A lot of times we tackle some of these topics just by concept without a clear measure, and I think this is one of the big things. And if not, there's a fifth one I added to conclude my presentation, which is actually, just try to turn it off and then on again, and maybe it just works, and then it's up, and then you get your orders again in. And with that, that's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Cool. I mean, you can stay here. But before that, me and Mauro want to have a competition with you. We're willing to offer a big prize for the best picture taken of us with this behind. So if everyone in the room can pull out their phones, please. Everyone. This is a mandatory thing in meetups at Glovo. You have to have it. You'll press click when I tell you. Do not take the picture yet, okay? Everyone needs to have the picture ready. Please, phone. Marius, I see you. Sorry, that's my friend. Cool. And now you will scan this QR and complete the feedback form, which is a mandatory form which you have to complete as feedback before we move into the QR. We're trying to get a very high participation for the feedback form and, fool or get fooled. It should be a very quick form which allows us to get better, to grow, to develop this space further, and hopefully to see how you felt about it. I know it's another meeting at a very late hour on Thursday, but there's drinks after, so hopefully that warms you up. Cool. Let me know once you've completed it. Sorry. No. Cool. It's like an exam, yes. It's your first one that lives in the paper gets a prize, I guess. Cool. Cool. I know this must have been like quite an information overload. However, now we will pass on the microphone to you for any questions that you might have towards us. So this is both for me and Mauro. As a reminder, the themes were performance indicators for engineering teams, where that Romanian guy kept on talking for half an hour, and Mauro with technical excellence. I know I must have presented quite a few things for you, so I did prepare the indicators for you to have behind during the Q&A. So if you have any specific questions about any of the indicators we follow in the team, you're more than welcome to ask your questions now. Remember the exercise, we lifted our hands, we put them up. It's very easy to do so. We have someone that should help us with the microphone should you have a question. Um, Please, if you have any questions, do raise your hand. Or you can think about the question and then raise your hand. Cool. No, no, no. This is recorded, so.
Okay. This is for Raz. I was curious, how do you know? You had a slide where you had like expectation 43 and then actually delivered 77. How do you know if the team outperformed your expectations or the ticket sizes were actually overestimated?
That's a very, very good question. I think that comes with experience in terms of how the sizing exercise comes. At the start, obviously, everything felt, in terms of sizing, of teacher sizing, sometimes it felt like tickets that were, in my eyes, small looked like medium or large because of they didn't have the exercise, but then the sizing is curated based on past experiences. So now I have a high confidence into the sizing that is given to the tickets. And it's also voted through a vote procedure during the grooming meetings during Monday. So the story leader comes with the tickets, presents the context, which they had a week to prepare, and then the team votes on the t-shirt size. And if it's unanimous, that's the size. If there's other sizes, we have a discussion to decide on the size. So it's a team decision on the size. Hence, I know that it's a confidence based on experience of what the size is. And then that's translated into unit sizes, which is then reduced with the focus time, green flag and everything, and then you have the final number.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
And I have another question
For me?
for you.
Cool.
You presented a lot of metrics. I'm really curious, which one do your developers deem as being really useful, and what would they like to change at the same time?
Right, my developer is right behind you from my team. I don't know, Fede, do you want to take the question? What do you find the most useful indicator we have in the team?
Oh, this was not prepared. Well, I don't know if I would say like one indicator, but what I can say is I mean, Rust become our EM more in October, more or less, no, October, November. And yes, since then we started, I mean, it was very notorious how these indicators were like absorbed by the team in a very natural way. And now we are, yes, we are able to really see week over week how are we improving or not. But yeah, I mean, for me, probably the thing that was more impactful was, yes, this ability to size the effort of the things in these t-shirt sizes and stop thinking about like time and start thinking more on complexity, dependencies with other teams, and yes.
Cool. Thank you, Fede, for the support. Let's give a round of applause for Fede for doing that. Thank you. I know it wasn't easy. I told you this space gives personal development. And beyond that, I think what I would change to be a bit more pragmatic from my side, I think that we still have work to do on engineers understanding their business impact. So even though we have the strategic alignment and we're trying to be clearer and clearer on what happens, it's hard to still match that. Hey, you've delivered this ticket and this was the impact, and it to stick. I can present it, but then I have meetings where I live like, did they get that? Did they understand what they did with that? So it's always important to listen to feedback, to get close to our users. Just this week, I had a focus group with a Romanian group of couriers, and just listening that, I lead courier onboarding, which is responsible for onboarding couriers. And one of their favorite things in comparison to Bolt is how fast you can become a courier, which is the system we've been building for the last months. And to hear that and those improvements is like very validating, and it's that idea of like, hey, here's the business impact, and bringing that close to engineers and taking them out of, you don't really just have to do PRs, you have to understand what your impact is a continuous challenge for EMs. Question?
I have a question. Like, do you use the same T-shirt size to assess individual contributors' performance in the team?
What do you mean by that?
I mean that like you have a team of 5 and you need to know like who is doing their best and who is just slacking around and I don't know.
Yeah, well, if I've used the same for each engineer, you mean? Yeah, I have the predicted estimated per engineer T-shirt size. Well, of course, people go over or under, but I see your point. It would be based on levels because we have different type of levels of engineers. So my expectations will be based on that. They noted, but for now, no, we have the unit, and that's not measured in really performance reviews. It's not. I'm not going to say, hey, you've delivered 100 extra small unit sizes in your half, and that means you're a high performer. It has to be their effort has to translate to business impact, to results in our OKRs, and that's the impact indicators which connect to the T-shirt sizes after. Remember the December issue I had. How do I present what we've done to have an impact in performance review? Their velocity, their speed, and how they move drives more and more product development and releases, which drives more impact, which allows me to show in performance reviews that this is what my engineers have achieved. So it has to connect. We have an online question.
Abioye, you can unmake yourself if you want, or we can read it. No.
Yes. Can you hear me clearly?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So I was going to type the other two. So the question I asked in the chat is, you talked about team utilization rate, and I think you mentioned stuff like the green flag and meetings and whatnot. So I'm curious how you factor in holidays, time off into, team availability and capacity, and if you have maybe a spreadsheet or a template that you use to manage this.
No, I factor in weekly. Yeah. So by doing this weekly, I look at who's off. This week, for example, has been a decrease in the predicted sizes that I have because I have an engineer that was off for 3 days. One of my engineers was off today. So in the Monday weekly planning, that goes in decrease in the size, because if I lose one engineer for 1 day, it means I've lost 2.8 extra small unit sizes that I can deliver. So those factors come in when we calculate what our prediction is for the week and then gets translated into the board. It's not thing really automatic. I'm fully transparent during the planning meeting. We look at the team calendar, we discuss. People might have interviews, and if they have interviews, that's about 1.5 hours with the loop meeting, which I have to integrate as well. So it's very much still manual in terms of people management, but that does factor in a lot in the estimation. So I do like to account for it during planning.
Okay. Can I go for the two questions as well?
Go for it. The word is oyster.
Perfect. So you said you do Kanban weekly. I'm curious why you decided to go with Kanban and not Scrum, and if you think there will be any challenges adapting your approach or this, metrics and whatnot to Scrum.
Not at all. I think it's easier in Scrum than in Kanban. I think Scrum specifically is more stable and more defensive to changes and to unexpected situations, because I shouldn't plan necessarily in Kanban, right, per week. This is just for me to do this. It's a Scrumban what I'm doing. It's a Scrum with Kanban put together. If you implement this in sprints, you're setting your goals, which are your sizes, and then again, you can calculate your velocity, your sizing, how much you think you can deliver in your sprint should be delivered against how many people you have in, your green flag, focus time, utilization rate. So I think the indicators specifically work even better with Scrum than with Kanban, because in Kanban, I don't have like a weekly goal. I just have expectations, which if they delay, they're fine. But having these indicators allows me to transform Kanban in Scrum without my engineers realizing.
Okay, excellent. And my last question for now is
Sorry,
related
yeah,
to,
go ahead.
to backlog readiness, right? So in my team, I'm trying to get to a point where the team is mature when it comes to definition of ready, definition of done, and acceptance criteria. Have you been able to get this right on your team? And, how did you go about it if you have, or is it still a work in progress?
Yeah, you have access to our Confluence. You can check the team's definition of ready or done. The way you can do it, even for teams that don't have access to Confluence, is through trial and error and failing. I had to have plenty of incidents, or I did at the end of the half Who Wants to Be an Agile Millionaire, where I showed every initiative to my engineers, and they had A, B, C of how many days it took them, and then I was showing them how many days it took and why it took us way too long or way too short. So after all initiatives or user stories, I kept track of making sure that we know what made us slow. So I show, for example, in the planning, like, hey, these incidents have happened again. Our control chart, if you remember in Jira, we now have 10 days things on the board. It's because we didn't think of external dependencies and so on and so forth. So all of these are learned in order to define the definition of ready and of done to not make those things happen again. So story leaders, which is an idea that I very much inspired from Pedro here in the room, was hence why a shared space is very important for learning. Which is now quite clear, and story leaders are responsible of aligning their tasks to the definition of ready. Otherwise, they're not ready for the drumming. All clear?
Yeah, I mean, it's good answers. I can always follow up, but thank you a lot.
Of course. We have another question there. Where is the mic? Here you go.
Hello. Very quickly, how do you make sure that your engineers focus in the most impactful or most value in the team? Because sometimes when there is a lot of focus on speed and delivery of tasks, sometimes engineers might just pick the easiest tasks. Let's pick 10 of these ones which we are going to deliver, so we increase the velocity, but they are not actually adding a lot of value. How do you try to balance that?
Thank you for your question. I think that's very much grounded by product and by product on how product comes to us. So because our product manager defines our roadmap, which is then picked up by engineers for what I could present from my engineering manager perspective. So the user stories and what comes next is driven by the product manager. And then we do grooming for based on the user stories which have been properly refined. And then we ensure that the order in Kanban, because you still have an order of priority, comes based on the product intentions. If, however, you have engineering initiatives or things that are not driven by product, your individual contributors are humans, and you can just tell them, hey, this is not the main priority, and you can change to that. You're a point of confidence by giving them direction. You should drive them towards what's more impactful for you, but also for them. This is why velocity doesn't work on their own, because otherwise senior engineers would just deliver small tickets to have a high velocity and then, yay, look at me. But there's a balance between everything: efficiency, quality, complexity, impact. All of those need to blend together to make a beautiful, agile tiramisu. Of course.
Yeah, hi. I think that the whole process to include a user story into the sprint or to the Kanban relies on a great synergy with your product manager. So my question is, what happened to those requirements that doesn't come from product side, and those come from tech initiatives or platform, and there's no clear definition of how to deal with things? How do you make your team to actually know how to deal with that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's where I come in, because I'm an engineering manager as well. So I'm responsible of the engineering complexity for the team as well. But beyond that, we have a layer of defense for that as well, which is making our engineers look deeper into platform or engineering topics, such as a PM would do through documentation such as request for comments, an RFC, or a one-pager tech breakdown before they become story leaders for that. So you first do your research as an engineer of what needs to be done, or I do the research for you, such as one of our migrations in the past for the image service, and then I pass it on to you. So you have a further time ahead in order to plan what then becomes what a story leader is. So that comes from engineering because it's engineering. Did that answer your question?
I have a question to you, Russ. You mentioned that the lead time has been reduced 50% for the last like half a year since you joined. What was the biggest bottlenecks, and what of what you like introduced helped the most?
Yeah, thank you. So this is in comparison with how the team was delivering in June when I started versus how they deliver now. So that's where the reduction is 50%. I still want them to move faster, but that's just me being very ambitious with the potential I see in the team. I think how it's clarity of tech breakdown. A lot of tasks come in the boards with no description, with nothing on it. We're like, hey, reach out to this PM and they'll tell you what to do. To do means it has to be ready to be picked up for work. I should go in the board and be clear on what I need to do for that ticket as well. And that's where a definition of ready, in order to name what is ready, is required. And secondly, the story leaders, for sure. Doing that tech breakdown and with the requirements of what a story leader needs to do. So reaching out to stakeholders, understanding if there's any external dependencies, if there's any API requirements, if there's any front-end work, doing all of that a week before, going to grooming, being ready that I understand the problem, allows engineers to have high confidence in what's on the board rather than, hey, you reach out to this PM, discover it, and we'll see what happens. Because that takes such a long time for engineers to go back and forth, and it's not engineering time, it's discovery time, but we measure it on the board as engineering time. So yeah, definition of ready and clarity.
Yeah, one more clarification about like this story leaders. Like, are they like architects, or like do they work like
No, they're engineers. They're engineers from my team. The concept of story leader is just a name to make it
like
sound
older,
cool. It's
Okay.
any level. If anyone is prepared and shows that they have the capacities to be a story leader, you can just give them the responsibility of, hey, take this user story and break it down. What I do with new starters, though, is I do pairing story leaders. So a higher level engineer pairs with a lower level engineer, because engineering is not just about knowing how to code, it's about the mindset. It's building, fixing, completing puzzles, right? So you have to be able to take an issue and break it down and understand what happens there. And it also allows you to understand the scope by being a story leader. So it's just engineers.
Thanks.
Of course. Mauro is here as well, but I will take any question. Do we have one there? No? Any other takers? Okay. I have a question for Mauro. How do we translate technical excellence standards that you presented from your level of principle? How should EMs introduce those into their teams?
By making sure they happen. No, I mean, I would say by not delegating into the most senior people that those happen. I think my expectation is that the EMs really know at every time how their team are doing in terms of excellence, in terms of uptime and so on, or any other metric, and that they stay on top and factor them in. I would say I would factor them into the quality vertical you added there. So yeah, I would say basically that.
Anyone else? Any other takers? We still have 2 more minutes, so you can ask any other type of questions if you want. It's fine. I'm a Scorpio. Cool. We have 2 more. We'll take that one in the front first.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was very, very nice. I have a human resources question. Has this affected somehow your churn of engineers? Has anybody, left the boat on the way?
No, many people joined. I would say that, no, I haven't had any churn. I've had someone leave because of their own, actually today, because they became a digital nomad in Thailand. So, can't judge that. But no, I haven't had any churn, and I do feel that it keeps people closer to the team, actually. People want direction and clarity in order to have time for their brain to think about the problems that they do, not about, oh, how will I pick this up, you know? So it brings stability to the space, and everyone's just looking for a safety boat to sail in, right? It's much more stable for the engineers.
I have a question for both of you, actually. Um, so you were saying that engineering managers tend to be quite lonely in their work because they don't get to share ideas that much. I think I saw this idea implemented at Amazon, but I'm not entirely sure. They swap engineering managers in their team once a year, one quarter every year. What do you guys think about this idea?
You go first. No.
I mean, I've been talking the whole time. Give me 1 second. I would love that if we play fair. So we should set some ground rules before on what I'm jumping in, you know. But I would love to do that. We have the process for software engineers called Erasmus. We move engineering managers at Glovo based on their interests and in order to ensure they grow. And I think that's kind of happening right now. We tend to, even Dimitri here is now taking over another cluster. So like, you know, doing a bit, looking over other teams, expanding the scope that someone can have. I would love to swap my teams because I know that the indicators are in their culture. If I leave, if I go on holiday, they will still do all of this. So I would love to instill that in engineers. It's not me, it's the team. Like the engineers are this. I'm just,
And
you
this
know.
would be, how do you say it? Proof that it's actually within the team. Like you don't leave and they're like,
Actually,
yes,
any EM that wants to swap,
do
like
something else.
I would love to. No. I'm joking.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer it from the other perspective, from the perspective of an engineer. I think it's something I would really like to see also because of the connection to the business beyond the scope you've seen so far. No, I've seen engineers being way better in a lot of the areas and growing way much when they're exposed to multiple facets of the problem and not just one area. So I would swap it more on allowing more movement of engineers per se. And also I would say that a lot of times what I've seen is a lot of teams that maybe are lagging behind on these is actually because the resource allocation and the scope of the team are not really balanced. So a lot of times it's not actually the engineers that are slow. Maybe there's not enough requirements to pick up or anything like that. So I would say that this mindfulness about, hey, like allowing engineers to grow and deliver more, I think as engineers we like to solve problems. So I would say just giving that chance.
I do want to add on that. This is the last thing we'll say, and then we'll go to pizza and beers. Yes for this, no for people. Changing your manager would impact the people in terms of people management. And this fully completes the circle of today that it's not just about quantifiable data, it's about qualitative data as well. The trust and the team that you build around you and how they relate to you in terms of personal development, growth, confidence, that you cannot do a swap from because I have to restart to gain trust once again. So quantifiable, sure. Qualitative, no. And this is what an EM is, doing both of them and trying to find the balance between both. So I'm going to stick to my own two teams for now. And with that, any final takers or should we end it? Cool. Thank you for the Q&A.
Thank you.
1 second. Oh, so yeah, now we're going to have pizza and beers, but I do want to tell you that we're having networking as we eat, but it's a bit of an intentional networking because I'm cheesy. And what happens now is usually networks like this come for you usually get stuck with the same people and you talk with the people you know and that's about it. That's not the point here. The point here is to get to know each other or maybe do some swaps around and talk to other people. So throughout the hour, you're going to have different questions on the screen that you can rely as anchors to continue your conversation because I know it's not easy for everyone to open up and just say more than, hi, my name is, and I'm from this company. So we'll start with who are you and with what intention did you join today? Why are you here today? Why are you giving us the time? If you meet with people while you talk, please rely to this question and questions will change. There's 4 of them. Thank you for listening and let's enjoy the beers and pizza.